Hi, boys and girls. So here we are back with our story, our historical fiction story about Joshua's diary on the Oregon Trail. He's writing down, not every day, but many times, different things that happened to him. We know his family was unsure if they wanted to go from their home to the Oregon on the Oregon Trail for a better life in the West. And then after mom was convinced to do it, they joined their cousins, who the mom has a twin as the other mom. And we know Grandpa and Joshua are best friends. We know they sold everything and they've been living down by the river for a week or so, waiting to leave. And we met their new Wagon Trail family. And in the last read, we met Cousin Daniel, who is going to be the trail leader. And remember, in front of the boys, he took off his boots and he said his foot had no toes. And he said that he lost them because he walked all the way to Oregon. Charlie, Joshua's cousin, whispered, "Is it true, you think?" "Nah," I said back. Cousin Daniel heard and he grinned at me. "You're right, boy. I'll tell you the real truth. I was sleeping one night and a snake crawled up and bit them right off." So remember that part? Although he tells stories full of bluster, Dad is convinced that he'll be a good guide. So we're up to April 3rd now. We're waiting for the grass to green up. Cousin Daniel says that feed for animals is hard to come by. On the trail, God gives you the grass. He's right. We could never carry enough feed for the animals. Who would have thought that our whole trip must wait on grass? April 5th, still waiting. Everyone's restless, even the animals. To pass the time, Pa did some sums in the book. He added up the cost of all the supplies and animals and wagons camped here. It came to $130,000. I've never even seen $3 at one time. I know Mom and Pa have $180 for our trip. April 6th. Pa worries that we're waiting too long. If we delay, we won't make it to Oregon before the winter. It's going to take us 6 whole months. People tell about one wagon train, the Donner train, going to California. They got lost in the mountains and had to stop for the winter. Some people froze to death, and some starved to death. To survive, they cooked and ate their dog, and worse. Charlie grinned at Buster. He said, "I bet dogs taste good." I held Buster close. I said, "Don't listen, Buster. He's just trying to scare you." April 7th. Grandpa is coming. He raced into the camp yesterday on Daisy. He had just his saddlebags and some gold. He'll buy whatever he needs at the supply post. He said I should write in my journal anyway. Someone needs to record such madness, he said. Then he muttered about what mischief I could get into without him. I know the truth. He would miss me. April 8th. Last night, Grandpa slept under the wagon with me. We talked about Oregon and buffalo and Indians. And then, so odd, Grandpa talked about Grandma. He hardly ever does that. She died when I was just a baby, so I don't remember her. He said it was hard to leave her grave. I felt a kind of lump in my throat when he said that. I never before thought that he might be lonesome. We talked until the whole camp was dark and just the embers glowed in our fire. We fell asleep talking. I'm real glad that Grandpa is here. April 10th. Today our wagons move out. There must be 100 wagons strung out along the trail. Some are fancy, some are plain. Some are in between like ours. Some have words painted on them. Many say Oregon or bust. Some say manifest destiny. Pa wanted to paint ours too. What shall it be, he asked Ma. Going home? Ma told him to wait till we got to Oregon. Then we'll see if it's home or not. Now this is April 13th, so they've been waiting since March 30th, so it's been almost 2 weeks. They've just been living down by the river. April 13th. We've ridden and walked for days, and yes, the grass is green, but I can hardly see it. The dust is so thick I choke, and it smells like hot animals and animal droppings. Charlie and I tied handkerchiefs over our faces. I feel sad for the animals. Little brown Buster is gray with dust. When we stopped tonight, Pa sent me to care for Lori, our cow. Her eyes were caked shut with sand. Charlie helped me wipe her clean. When he took off his handkerchief, I laughed. He was brown around his eyes and forehead and white under his handkerchief. I said he looked like a raccoon. He said I did too. April 14th. This is our routine. We wake up before sunrise to Cousin Daniel blowing his bugle. The men round up the cattle and hitch up the oxen. We roll up our pallets. The women make breakfast of dried meat and bread and coffee, and we eat. The women and girls use sand to clean the plates and then rinse them in the water. We reload the wagons and off we go 20 miles every day. Women sit in the wagons and knit. I don't know how they do it with the way the wagons sway. The men and children walk. All but the tiny ones. Mr. and Mrs. Allison and Adorable always ride. They're old and fat, and they pant just walking from wagon to visit at night. Even Adorable gets out of breath from walking. April 24th. We have scouts who ride ahead. They look for Indians and wolves and a safe place to stop at night. When we stop, we make circles of the wagons. The front tongue of the one wagon gets locked to the rear of the other. We make several big circles. There's an open space left, like a horseshoe. The animals are tethered and guards are set to watch. The children play inside the horseshoe. Becky's one of the youngest, yet she bosses all the other children. Today, I heard her tell little January, "You can be the daddy. Rachel is our baby." Rachel said she didn't want to be the baby, so Becky went to Mrs. Gibbons. She asked if she could borrow the March baby. Mrs. Gibbons laughed, but she said no. April 27th. At night over the fires and the smell of the coffee and sizzling meat, the women gossip. A lot of the talk is about the Douglas sisters. Mrs. Gibbons wondered why single women would be on the trail alone. Aunt Lizzie said she heard they're planning to homestead on their own. I said a woman could never do that. Ma said, "Don't be too sure of that, young man." April 28th. Not even 3 weeks out and something awful happened already. Our wagon was going along a rocky bluff. On the far side, the wagons began to rush down. Even with brakes dragging them, they fairly flew. The Allisons' wagon bounced from against one another. Mr. Allison and Adorable toppled off. The front wheels ran over Mr. Allison. But before we could stop, the back wheels ran over him. And then they ran over Adorable. Mr. Allison screamed something awful. And then it was more awful because he stopped screaming. I can't write more. Later, Mr. Allison's leg got cut off. He died right there. Adorable got all smushed and dead. Mrs. Allison stared, and then she said, very sadly, "Well." Fat tears ran down her face. She took the reins of her oxen. The men helped her turn her wagon toward home. She drove off. She didn't wait to see Mr. Allison put in the ground. We buried him, his leg, and Adorable, too. We ran wagons over the grave. That's so the Indians wouldn't find it and dig it up. Cousin Daniel says they dig up graves to get at clothes. They especially like the buttons. Tonight, Cousin Daniel said that Mr. Allison's just the first to go. There will be more, he said. Ma told him to shut his mouth. My Ma, she actually said those words. Sometimes I think my Ma should have been born a man. April 30th. Last night the Drucker family moved their wagon up near ours, where the Allisons' wagon used to be. After supper, when the sky was blue-black and the stars were winking, the men took out dulcimers. They call them hog fiddles. They began to play, and the women began to dance. Bobby and her little sister Sarah climbed up on the tail. of the wagon. They did a regular barn dance there, feet flying. Aunt Lizzie grabbed Ma's hand, but Ma pulled back. Pa clapped his hands and began to sing. I wish I dared to join in, but I thought I might look foolish. May 1st. Mrs. Meany has wide, turned-up nose and pointy ears. She looks just like a pig. She's as mean as a pig, too. Every morning Mr. Meany carries her outside and puts her in her chair. She sits there knitting and complaining. She complains how hard the chair is. Oh, I am comfortless, she says. She says it loud. I know she has her eye on Ma's chair. May 2nd. Sure enough, last night Ma brought over her very own chair, the canvas one. Pa bought her. Ma said Mrs. Meany could use it for the rest of the trip. And do you know something? Mrs. Meany never even said thank you. She just said, I can sure use it, dearie. I knew she was a pig. May 5th. Tonight Mrs. Meany was knitting and complaining like usual. Then I saw her coax Buster to her. She held out a bit of cake. When he got close, she popped the cake in her own mouth. Buster yapped at her. She screamed, Vicious dog! Now Ma says I have to keep Buster tied up in camp so he won't bother her. If I were Buster, I wouldn't yap at her. I'd bite her ankles, except they're probably poisonous. May 7th. There's a family here from Ohio named the Hulls. They've been in the rear, but last night they moved up near us and their friends, the Druckers. The Hulls have lots of children in all sizes. One boy is named Frederick. He's 10 years old, but as big as a bull. Today, he walked with Charlie and Adam and me. Secretly, Adam and I named him Me Too. Everything we do, he does. I kick a stone, he kicks a stone. I pick up a stick, he picks up a stick. Tonight, he saw me writing in my journal. I believe somehow he'll get himself a journal. His mother's health is frail. She lies in the wagon, even on the trail. Mrs. Drucker says that Mrs. Hull will have another baby soon. Imagine, another baby. I think they have a dozen already. May 10th. Hot, hot, hot. May 17th. Cousin Daniel says we've crossed into Nebraska and will be at Fort Kearny soon. There we'll get supplies. Ma needs more medicine. The Epsom salts have been used up, soaking sore feet. Grandpa needs new shoes made for Daisy. He says they'll cost $3 each, and he wants a new gun. Guess what Mrs. Meany needs? A feather bed and a pillow, of course. Mr. Meany just says, Yes, dear. I sometimes wish it was Mrs. Meany who fell off the wagon and got run over. Then I ask God for forgiveness. Right, so we're getting to know more characters, Mrs. Meany and Mr. Meany. And now you know why Joshua thinks that Mrs. Meany has the right name. What she did with Ma's chair and with Buster and the little cake she was teasing him with. So there's some more character traits to keep in mind with the people that Joshua is spending his days with. We're going to stop there, and our next episode, they will be at Fort Kearny, where they can pick up some supplies.